Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Pielka. Today is July 20, 2025. Want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Please subscribe. Also want to thank the genre of music called jazz because that's how I found this amazing Benjamin Makinen through his films on jazz on YouTube. How cool is that? Ben, where are you calling from?
I'm checking in with you today, Jerry, from Bali, Indonesia. Let me know if you can hear me. Sometimes the monkeys come in and take my microphones.
I can hear you loud and clear. And it's
Okay.
been such a pleasure reviewing. Part one was December 29 of 2024, and part two was March 23rd of this year. So it's really been intense reviewing these. I've got like 40 pages of notes, which they're so precious to me. We ended part two. We ended part two with this question. Oh, do you want me to answer that? No, we're going to save it for part three. And it's sort of a stupid question, but it's basically on the origins of music. And we'll do a little more music and then we can get into documentary film or whatever, all these other great topics. And I had this thing I learned from Carolyn Casey. It's called biomimicry, where humans mimic nature. So the guy who invented Velcro saw it in plants. And so he said, I could do that. And maybe we were building dams first, or maybe the beavers were building dams first. We don't know, but probably we saw the beavers building dams and go, oh, we can do that. So that's biomimicry, which is kind of the opposite or a flip on McLuhan's everything we invent extends some humanness. So, we invented knife and fork to extend our teeth. So, we don't need knife and fork, but you get a tough piece of food, it's easier with a knife and fork. So, my little proposition was, well, maybe humans were whistling and humming first, and then the birds heard us and imitated us. And everybody goes, no, we imitated the birds. So, just your take on that sense of the origins of music. And I'm going to interject one more little thing, and that is in studying James Joyce, he was scaredy cat of thunder. And in the Joycean world, they say, well, that's what humans did. They imitated thunder and invented language. So that's another form of biomimicry. So any thoughts on this birds singing first or humans and the origins of music?
Yeah, that's a great setup. Well, I mean, if we're to believe the professional cadre of modern genetic scientists, animals came first. And so whatever innate qualities we have as humans, and we do, again, I think it's the scientists who, to me, parenthetically, I believe science is often catching up to what humans innately understand or do. Science is kind of validating and putting words to a lot of it. Check some of my signals there. Here we go. Meaning that, yes, we humans have been identified as having the mirror genes in our DNA. So the biomimicry, as you call it, or mirroring, we're hardwired for that. And that's why we're incredible creatures of manifesting our dreams or our creative visions and learning language and sound through imitation. And so the music, so on the surface level, given the body of science and given our the observable realities, it seems to me most likely that we began imitating the sounds that we were born into. Now, chicken before the egg. Of course, a child, if you're born into a community or a village with mothers and fathers, adults, other people, a child wouldn't prioritize adult sounds necessarily over animal sounds. In fact, they all may be one. So once we're up and running, once humans are being born into a world with other humans and animals, how would a child an infant be able to distinguish that language, which has interesting implications for musicality. And a lot of the modern masters, whether you're talking about Mozart, Ellington, or Thelonious Monk, maybe even Frank Zappa, little softball back to Jerry's Park. Maybe these guys are people who had a seamless or an delineated understanding of sound. They didn't have to filter through, is this, what is this sound? Is it legitimate? Where does it come from? We just integrate the sounds of nature. And the sounds of nature, by the way, like you said, thunder, they're not just animal. It's the physical creation of sound from falling trees or running water, et cetera, et cetera. However, so that being said, yeah, I would say that humans got music from their environment. Perhaps we were hardwired to absorb it, internalize it, and put it back out through our own filters. I think we were hardwired and ready to go to use language, and music is a language. But what's interesting with AI, and I recently founded the Bali International AI Film Festival. Open submissions, guys, send us your work, and anime, because anime today is being used by AI. But what AI and the probing into the mechanistic interpretability, guys, the engineers of AI, which could be called alternative intelligence, by the way. We don't have to get locked into the idea of artificial, because humans made it. And this ties into what you said about what McLuhan said, I think, which is that anything we make has a humanness to it. I think you said that.
Yes, humanness. Very good. You got great recall, dude.
Oh, really. Thanks. Thank you. As soon as I stopped drinking and doing drugs, good things started happening. Well, so here's what's interesting about, the conversation that all these deep thinkers and deep thinkers being all humanity. You don't have to be a mechanistic interpretability engineer to be on this level, but we're starting to wonder, well, the reason why I bring in MechInterp is because these guys, the engineers and mathematicians who, quote unquote, invented AI, they're people now, they're the grandchildren of the inventors. AI has been around since 1950, arguably. Well, they're inventing AI. Well, they're creating AI algorithms and machines to go study what AI is doing, because they don't know. And the information they're getting back leaves them still not knowing. They're like, we don't know how AI is doing what it's doing on the deep descent neural networks. In fact, one of them said it's like an alien language. And so what I'm getting at is the notion that if humans made music or create music from what they hear in the environment, and what McLuhan said about whatever humans make has a humanness, there's two things that's interesting to me. If humans did make AI has humanness in it, because I agree with McLuhan's primary message, his medium in the message. But it also begs the question, if AI has this like intrinsic, deep, universal quality to it, a creative intelligence, the need to seek and explore and make connections and seek answers, if that's something, maybe AI made us.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant.
So, well, that's not necessarily my idea. It's just, I'm just synthesizing the things in my environment.
No, it's really good, because our environment and our inventions make us. And you're such a sharp listener, Ben. Here's another one. You just
what's that? What?
You pulled out of the blue so well. Marshall said, technology is the most human thing. That is the most human. So everybody goes, oh my God, we're being ruined by this or that. And if you flip it, if you walk forward, we live the world walking forward, but in order to understand it, you got to walk backwards and flip it. So you flip AI, which is auditory imagination, T.S. Eliot, alien intelligence, it could have come from other space, creatures. But if you flip it to IA, that's Marshall's main thing, integral awareness. And that's what you're doing. You're trying to get the big picture and integrate all these possibilities. In fact, I'm glad you brought up Zappa because he was in church when he was a teenager or a young kid, and he saw the candle flames of the moving when the choir sang. So the air says, well, music is air molecule sculptures. So that is like, what is this origin of music? Because you also mentioned sound, music, and noise. How do we distinguish those three things? Are they different? Now, we talked about silence, and since we did silence, I found one more, and this goes along with this. You know, uh, the guy who wrote the book Language About Language, Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce. He's scared of thunder, but maybe thunder is where we got language from, imitating it. Bob Dylan says, experience teaches that silence terrifies the most. Now he's qualifying that. Any thoughts in our discussion on silence, which was really deep for me? I learned a lot from you. Experience teaches that silence terrifies the most.
Well, and if to the extent that that's true, I believe that's learned. That maybe ties back into the thunder, the being afraid of thunder. There's two really deep and intrinsic lessons there. The distinction of sound, the distinction of nature and animals versus melodious or musical sounds. That's all learned. Those distinctions are imposed upon us, and not necessarily for bad reasons. I'm not judging, but it does. But those reasons do compound and become prohibitive or restrictive to the artist. So much of what we do as artists, or recovering Catholics, or recovering, whatever you are, breaking free of the structures imposed upon you from, let's just say, well-intentioned people in the beginning, out of, good people want you to survive, and they want to give you an advantage, and they want you to, and then it becomes duplicitous, where they want you to serve the needs of the community of which they are the leaders and the primary benefactors. But,
Back to Dylan. Everybody's got to serve somebody.
Right. Well, and for those that challenge that statement, enter the thunder. And as human beings, thunder is, it's inherently just what it is, but we benefit from understanding there are things greater than us, and we better watch out. And fear in general is always a great tool for us to learn to pause in a moment of silence and check out what's going around us, because it might be bigger and badder than us. And maybe there's a way to avoid danger, or maybe there's a way to integrate it into our lives, so we can manifest some of that power and have a more mutual, interconnected relationship with things. So the silence. Okay, we've got thunder, which is a great teacher and a great power. It's a doer, a changer, a remodifier. It's one of those great gods of creation, perhaps more obviously on the side of destruction, but destruction is the other side of the coin of creation. So we've got that. Then, to the degree that silence is to be, if you said it was to be feared, and that was that Bob Dylan saying that?
Bob Dylan said, experience teaches that silence terrifies the most.
Well, of course, who knows where Bob Dylan was in that moment, or if he was waxing poetic. That's true some of the times, but silence is also where we come from. It's a place of, look at the Buddhist monks, for example. We go in, and yes, it does, Jerry, and perhaps it's where many answers reside, where the inspiration comes from. So the idea, again, as I was going to use the word infants, but as pre-air breathing beings in the womb, we get, depending on the environment your mother is carrying you in, we get a lot of silence. of course, it's massaged and with the heartbeat of the mother and the flowing sounds of liquids around us. Um, but it's almost as quiet as it's going to get on Earth for us when we're in the womb, I think. Um,
Yeah.
and that's where we're, and that's where we're experiencing our first relation, connected and disassociated from and within the material world that we've been born into of sound and experience.
Yeah. That's that when they asked McLuhan, will there ever be silence? He said things don't exist on their own. They exist in relationship. So that's the, that chamber you just described sounds like the chamber they put John Cage in so he could hear silence. And he couldn't hear silence because he heard his blood pumping, to in his nervous system. But just to go back for a second,
Jerry, wait, Jerry,
go ahead.
what do deaf people, if a person is truly deaf and they can't
Yeah.
hear the blood,
Yeah.
maybe those are people connected directly to silence as we're defining it.
Yeah. It's again relationship because they're hearing some sort of vibration. Because I know punk kids who go to uh, uh, deaf kids who go to punk clubs feel the music. It leaks through, even though that they don't have the proper hearing devices in their head. It goes through. But there was one thing you said that spurred this thing, because there was a tsunami warning in Hawaii, I guess, yesterday, because there was an earthquake in Russia. And this lady who's a famous writer, I heard her on the radio talking. She was raised in the Caribbean, and she said, my mother never read a book, but she knew what to do when a tsunami hit from the songs they sang. So there's music as a teaching device. We don't need no stinking books. We can just sing and know what to do, you know. And so this thing about Dylan saying, terrifies us. Well, of course, silence doesn't only terrify us, it calms us. But I got into this jag on suffering because we study suffering in my group recently, and everybody goes, Dylan says life is suffering and the Buddha says life is suffering. I goes, why do you have to say it's suffering? It's more like, why don't you say life is not suffering? And
Right.
so just as we hired with Tom Waits' bass player last night, amazing, Greg Cohen.
Wow.
He's played
cool.
Woody Allen and John Zorn, everybody. And here's the Tom Waits quote that I love about suffering, just to go off on this tangent about terrifying, and you brought up the word fear. And it's music related. Waits says, I like beautiful melodies telling me terrible things. The world is a hellish place, and bad writing is destroying the quality of our suffering. So it's so tongue in cheek. Wait a minute, bad writing. So you mean bad novel writing or bad songwriting is destroying the quality of our suffering? So we have to have quality to our suffering? Like, oh, that was good suffering. Oh, no, that's bad suffering. And people do qualify it. They think, I heard Alan Watts saying today, oh, yeah, you got to go through shit. That's what life is. And I'm like, well, who brainwashed you to believe that?
Well, your last point is on topic, is on point for the notion that suffering is something bad or undesirable.
Yeah.
All the 50 shades of suffering. Different cultures, I live in Bali, Indonesia, and I'm married to a Balinese woman, so I'm deeply involved with the culture, Balinese Hinduism, and of course we're on an island that is hit with tsunamis and floods and active volcanoes and famine and poverty and mudslide. Life. There's a lot of turnover here. Life happens fast, and and the human capacity to feel suffering is global. It's universal. So You
Yeah.
know, a mother who loses a child, and it's the feelings are the same, but how do we process them? How does our culture teach us to handle suffering? And it's a spin. You know, if suffering is just a natural part of the cycle, well, it hurts, but we have a basis to understand and process it so that we're not traumatized thinking we need to find better writers or better therapists to deal
Yeah.
with it. We've got culture. We've been taught a relationship to our environment, so you don't even necessarily need a spirit middleman or middlewoman to guide you through. Um, and that ties into the notion again. Bob Dylan, you know, classically speaking, or as far as his public persona, it comes from a very politically charged and politically focused. He's a politically focused bard of his
Yeah.
time. So if we interpret the things he says through the lens of that, we understand that silence is terrifying because, or I think that because it leaves us with the truth that we've been avoiding or hiding from, and that ties into a lot of forms of terror and discomfort. Is the way we have masked and avoided the truth that silence affords us, that an honest reflection, um, and so and that ties into the other things you said, the music conveying lessons on how to survive tsunamis. And again, that brings up the important notion of Westerners tend to think music exists to soothe or entertain or dance, and music traditionally, and it does have that capacity, and maybe maybe originally that's exactly what it does. Like again, a mother humming a lullaby to a child serves only the purpose of those two beings in intent. The reason a mother sings to a child isn't necessarily to, you know, appease the court, but music in general in society had a function. It wasn't necessary to entertain. It was maybe more so to appease or respect the gods or the kings or the people throwing a birthday party, whatever. So the notion that music carries lessons or stories is not so much an aberration as it is a normality. You know, you look at the Native American cultures who I've featured in my newest documentary, Echoes of Tradition. And for a non-literate people, for people who have been identified as not really writing their history down, it's done orally through songs.
Yeah.
And it's a living history because as you live as a people, your history grows and changes. So you amend the song. The song does not remain the same.
Hello. Put that in your lead pipe and smoke it.
Oh,
But Ben, it's so fun because we go off on these tangents and we back around. It's a constant. You know, it's the cover of one of McLuhan's books. It's two Mobius strips. My friend said, no, it's one Mobius strip, but it is actually two figures. So the Mobius strip carries through two, whereas we usually see a Mobius strip as one character. His is two with the Mobius strip connecting them. Because I'm glad you brought all that up because I wanted to go into one more function of music. But first,
function. What's your function?
yeah, junction at the function. Roscoe
Yeah.
Mitchell, avant-garde
Bob Dylan.
saxophonist of Art Ensemble, said silence. He said silence is perfect. And Audre Lorde, the Black poet, said your silence will not protect you. So this is again bringing it to the individual's relationship with the environment of sound, music, and noise. Here's what my friend said a couple weeks ago. What's the function of music? He said to hypnotize people to be themselves. I'm curious. I'm curious your thoughts on that because I just said, you know, self-brain, you know, MK Ultra, yourself brainwash. This is an interesting thing. He uses the verb hypnotize people, but then he flips it to be themselves.
Well, you saw my my unadulterated reaction. I love that quote. I love that notion. Again, to me, that's one card in the deck.
Yeah.
You know, your Mobius. I almost said Mobius strip. Your Mobius description.
Yeah.
Had me thinking. Well, you know, all of these. You know, when we talk about symbols or words or concepts, like music is meant to hypnotize us into embracing our higher selves or whatever.
Yeah.
These are all true tools in the box, extensions of the reality. They're all tributaries of the same river, and we as humans, embrace or use or internalize whichever one suits us at the time. In other words, the Mobius thing could be multidimensional. You know, I mean, if the universe is however many dimensions, then that Mobius is going more than one or two. But we talk about it for a learning, getting back to music as a learning aid. We're using these symbols and concepts as a way of finding deeper understandings, and rarely is one ever the only thing. So, like, I love that guy's quote about music being used to hypnotize us. It often does. Here's the catch, you know, along those lines, because music does have that intrinsic power, or we as humans are wired to react to it that way. That's how it can be manipulated against us. And I'll never forget reading. This is got to be 25 years ago or so. I saw a newspaper article. The U.S. was, surprise, surprise, the U.S. government involved in a military conflict in the Middle East. Go figure that out. 25 years. and I remember reading this article that the government, you know, DARPA, whoever, had figured out that they could weaponize Metallica. Yeah. They could weaponize heavy rock and roll and torture Middle Eastern men, you know, combatants, whatever, captured guys, by playing them loud rock and roll. It was so disturbing to them that they would reveal their inner secrets.
And it's like they try to get kids away from 7-Elevens by pumping classical music, like over really loud. Then they won't hang out in front of the 7-Eleven. Wow. So it is your prompts. Nobody sends me prompts. Here's some of the stuff I want to cover. And your word weaponization was so heavy, and we will get into that because you know, I think you touched on what Auden the poet said. The mystery of art is that we don't know if it activates or pacifies us. We want to think it's healthy and it's good for us, but it could be making us passive and just kicking back. Is that bad? Bertolt Brecht said, I want art that activates, not put you in a trance. Well, maybe if you're put in a trance, you might get an epiphany and get activated.
Yeah, I think what you said, all of this points back to the responsibility of the individual to understand and be in control of their own emotions and of their own being. Every single thing we're talking about is a direct line back to our personal agency. And you know, I'd like to believe that we're hardwired to figure that out on our own if we had to. But most of us tend to be born into a society in which I believe there are people within the society who can help us. There are people who work against us as well. But yeah, all these things, silence, art. If art is disturbing you, sit down and figure out why. You know, because if you're in a museum, you're just looking at something that's not even touching you, a two-dimensional thing hanging on the wall. Why is it making you feel like you want to slash it or throw paint on it, or you know, or why is it making you feel like you want to dance and go get married? I don't know. But if you figure that out, you have figured yourself out, and then that silence, then the silence and the thunder will never be scary. Yeah,
that's if you didn't see Olatunji and you didn't have those Lincoln logs in front of you, man, you would have been a different person, man. But we would still be here talking about this shit, I'm sure. Somehow we would have connected. Now this is
that's great, Jerry.
Well, this is LA Free Press asking Frank Zappa in 69 in about mentioning Pauline Oliveros. You know, she's an amazing, deep listening woman. She played accordion. Check her out. Pauline Oliveros. And her work was with sound above the audible and below, creating a mass. And Frank said, not that it created a mass, it created something audible. It produced a sum indifference tone, which happened to be located within the audible frequency range. Frank said, by combining something so high you couldn't hear it and something so low you couldn't hear it, it yields something in the middle you could hear. Whether you like that in the middle or not is another question. So, any thoughts on that? Some
Yeah.
indifference tone. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, that's fantastic. First of all, thanks. I wrote Pauline Oliveros.
Yeah, Oliveros. Deep
Got it.
listen.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
check it out. And accordion. I love
yeah,
that music. Thanks for that tip. Yeah, this is another great example of artists tapping into truths that science later tries to figure out. You touched upon this earlier, Jerry, when you mentioned the fact that that music, that deaf people can hear or be affected by
yeah,
music. And what we mean by that is the frequency vibrations,
yeah,
among other things,
yeah,
but and this is what Frank Zappa and Oliveros and the great artists are talking about. Whether we can hear them or not, science tends to say that the human ear has a limited capacity, right? Over 20K or whatever and below.
yeah,
These thresholds upon the spectrum of sound or frequency. Well, but what science tells us is that everything is affected by these vibrations. And so the artists are right, because what Oliveros is doing, what any musician doing, is creating ripples in the energy field, in
yeah,
the vibrations, the waveforms. There's actually air is being moved that we can't see the air. And if it happens in these other frequencies, we may not be able to hear it consciously with our ears, but it is affecting us. Overtone series, the
yeah,
and so that's why they're able to create weapons out of microwaves. Those are frequencies that exist on other ends of the spectrum that we can't see, but we certainly feel them. So yeah, and I think the great artists, people, whether they're hypnotizing us to make us open to other truths or to calm us into a meditative space, for all the reasons that music is used consciously by artists, and the great artists and performers are masters of reading a room and of feeling what's right and needed in the moment. And the great musicians will give into that space what is being called for. They don't just play the same cover song at the same tempo in the same set order. They're the great artists, and I've had the pleasure of working with a few, read the room. And what they're doing is they're actually tuning the frequencies like a radio on the fly to resonate with the audience in a way that's healing and beneficial. Given if it is the artist's intent to do that. An artist can get a crowd activated and pissed off and aggravated to go riot in the streets if they want, using the same principles.
yeah.
So yeah, it's fascinating. One guy I worked with, Lionel Young, he's an electric violinist out of Denver, Colorado. He's been the international blues competition winner a couple times. I'm going to release some duo stuff we did live at a live radio broadcast. He's phenomenal. He comes from a classical background. I believe his brother is a principal violist with the Boston Symphony. Lionel grew up exposed to the training of classical musician, but he also spent time in the Delta with the blues, with some pretty heavyweight Delta blues musicians. And so when he gets his electric violin out and sings, and he'll whistle and sing along with the string instrument, and he creates this overtone series within the context of the song and the story of the song he's singing. There's something else happening on a much broader, perhaps deeper level that's intense. And that's what these musicians, the great musicians, do with frequency manipulation, which is what Oliveros, which what Frank Zappa and anyone who talks about that, they're talking about things that science is figuring out.
Yeah, it's really good because I want to go into art and science, but I have one more music question, and then we'll go into art and science because that's exactly a perfect lead in. But I wanted to tell you what Frank called it, and he didn't make up the word, but he called it a wavicle. So it's particles and waves pushed together. So that's
Perfect.
this
That's
blend.
perfect.
Yeah, this blending. Yeah, a wavicle.
Wavicle.
And so this is Ben Ratliff. He's the guy who wrote a book on oh man, I lost my page. He wrote a book on Bill Frisell.
Oh,
And
I know Bill, kind of.
yeah, and he said, now why did this get buried all of a sudden just when I was
Bill,
about to?
actually, Bill. Oh, go ahead. I'll come
No,
back.
no,
to
no,
Bill
you go ahead because then I'll
while
find
you're looking. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
going to help you find it by distracting the audience here. I'm distracting you now with my frequencies. Bill Frisell is from Denver, Colorado. And,
Oh, is he really? I thought he was from Seattle. Thank you.
he lives in Seattle, or has been for the last
Yeah.
few decades, maybe.
Yeah.
He came up in Seattle, in Denver, and he got lessons from one of Denver's guitar heroes, who I'm spacing out for the minute. The thing about Bill Frisell ties into my first film, Jazztown, and
Yeah.
I had been collecting interviews for Jazztown, and over the course of more than a few years, I'd interviewed Diane Reeves, Ron
Yes.
Miles, and Charles Burrell.
Yeah.
Now, these were three people who got inducted into the Colorado Music Hall of Fame. I think that was November of 2017 or 18. And on the same night that Diane Reeves, Ron Miles, and Charles Burrell were being inducted, along with Earth, Wind, and Fire members, Bill Frisell was being inducted. And the night before the induction ceremony, Bill Frisell came to Denver in support of the documentary that was being released on him. I forget the name of that, but I went to the screening of the documentary on Bill Frisell. I met him afterwards because I had been trying to reach his agent, his label, and so I went up to him after the film, shook his hand, told him his music had been inspirational to me. One of his bands, with Driscoll and Joey Barron and his trio in the early '90s, blew my mind. So I introduced myself and I told him about my project, and I said I'd love to interview him. He said, "Absolutely, this sounds great. You know, just follow up with my agent." And of course, they never got back to me. But he would have completed the four people in my film that coincidentally were being inducted into the Music Hall of Fame. So Bill's the fish that got away.
That's good. You might catch him someday because my friend Sam Amadon, check him out on Tiny Desk, NPR Tiny Desk. He plays banjo and old timey music. He has Bill Frisell back. He has Bill Frisell backing him on his Tiny Desk. I was like, how'd you get Bill to back you? Like, oh, here's my side act, you know. But here's what Ben Ratliff wrote a big book on Bill, and here's what Ben said. I mean sound as it has long functioned among jazz players as a mystical term of art, as in every musician finally needs a sound, a full and sensible embodiment of their artistic personality, such that it can be heard at best in a single note. So me and you can hear Miles' couple notes and go, oh, that's Miles. And Ben reduced it down to two words. Miles is fragile and pointed. Coltrane is slightly undercooked and urgent. He says Bill Frisell is rubber. He said
undercooked.
Bill Frisell is wobbly and woozy. So if a writer that you really respected was going to summarize Ben sound, your sound, in a couple words, what two words would you go, hey, he got me, or that writer got me?
And when you use the word Ben, you're now referring to Ben Makinen, not Ben Ratliff.
Yes, I am referring to the great Ben Makinen. Benjamin Makinen, they're writing you up,
God
and I know
bless you,
you've been
man.
written up. You've been written up, but I'm saying, if someone wrote you up and they got 2 words and you go, that's kind of, you got it. You sort of,
I'd say a fiery whisper.
oh my God, isn't that beautiful? Whispering in fire. That is so beautiful. So
Well, it's
let's,
awkward. It's awkward being asked to do that because
I
normally
know.
the idea is you let someone else come up with that.
Yeah.
But the thing about writers, God bless them, they're just like anyone. You have
Yeah.
hits and you have misses,
Yeah.
and a lot of what you said that Ben wrote sounded really spot on.
Yeah.
The preface to his descriptors of
Yeah.
Coltrane, and but what he nailed there, you're paraphrasing or you're quoting of Ben's writing. He really nailed the essence of a jazz musician, and I talk about this with people a lot. The great, the true, the really the dedicated jazz musician is a seeker of truth.
Yeah.
They embrace the silence, and that sound is so critical because you can't live with yourself as long as you're BSing.
Yeah.
And it's not that you're BSing, but because so much of human is mimicry, and
Yeah.
any musician, most all musicians have to start from some sort of mimicry. In this day and age with records, for the last 120 years, every musician, jazz musician, has begun imitating their heroes, the sounds of the musicians they like. So, and we get addicted to that because the more accurately you mimic your hero, the more immediate response and feedback you're going to get from yourself and from the people around you, because you're going to sound great. If you're imitating great masters, you're going to sound great. And the trick is to get away from that and discover your own voice.
Yeah.
Because the jazz musicians that are on stage with you are hearing the same thing. They're hearing if you're bullshitting, or if you're digging deep through the silence to find a true unique voice that identifies you in that one note.
Yeah. So beautifully put. Yeah, because Ben, I left off this one quote in one of our first sessions, and I wanted to integrate it in, and it's such a perfect time. Basically, there's a theory that your name is who you are, and Marshall split what you just described as matching and making. And so you're making, you got the verb be. I be making. And so that is amazing. Your name's, mine is Gerald. Feel all I can. FL cup. Feel all I can. So I mean, it's just being creative with sounds of words.
It
And
is. You're right.
so Harold Bloom said in Anxiety of Influence, you absorb your influence, then you abandon them. It's like, good luck. Was Stevie Ray just a fucking Hendrix clone? Well, in a way, but when I heard him play Voodoo Child, I says, nope, he took it a little farther. God bless him. And so that's the thing called rooted in retro. My friend taught me it best. Like, Susie's not a retro doing Bessie Smith or Anita O'Day. She's rooted in them.
Right.
So she's learned how to absorb them and then abandon them. But it's good. You can tell, who comes from who, in the long.
That's a beautiful element of it. Let me suggest along those lines, in art and music, it's so easy to criticize. Sorry, I'm having microphone issues. I'm hitting my own feet. We would never criticize an Olympic athlete for imitating the motions of another great runner or swimmer.
That's very good.
You would. I mean, it would be the most obvious thing to do. If someone wins the gold medal, you study the way they run and you try to get your legs and arms going that way. And of course, I just do the rock and roll thing. And of course,
that's good. I like it.
And so if I want to be an Olympic swimmer, I'm gonna imitate Phelps. What's his name? As best I can. Now my body shape my body shape is different. So in my best imitation of Phelps, in an attempt to win the gold, I'm going to express my highest form, and it will not be exactly like him because I can't be like him. My body is different. So as artist, there's nothing wrong with Stevie Ray. Is whoever he imitated, if he embraced it and that released his true higher self,
Yeah.
The degree of difference between any human being is what, Jerry? Like a micro dot on one DNA strand. I don't know. We're so alike that it's amazing. I'm amazed that we can be so different with our voices and our music and our given how much
Stevie Ray Vaughan was an Albert King wannabe right from the start, and then he finally did that concert where he played with Albert, and it's like Albert sort of blew him off the stage, but it was still beautiful because he
I haven't
was
seen that.
duly respecting, and it's like Frank Zappa is a Spike Jones, Edgar Varese wannabe with a little Johnny Guitar Watson thrown in. I know that. I know exactly where he got it all, but he did kind of reinvent all those as a soup. He puts it in a cauldron and mixes it all together. Or my favorite is one of my favorite homeless guitarists in Venice. I says, so, we talk guitarists for hours. You'd love, he knows it all. And I goes, well, who were you influenced by? And he goes, well, all the CDs were on the dashboard of my car, and they melted into each other. I said, that is a great.
That would be a great sound. Oh my God, you've given me a direction for my next project, which I tell you, I just signed the first AI artist to the Be Making Music label. His name, Can I introduce him to you?
Please.
I'll do that coming up. But the imagery of CDs melting into each other is beautiful, Jerry. Jerry, I'm going to feel it all, because if we could make that into a sound, that image is so beautiful, because that's exactly what great artists, I think, either consciously or not try to do. I think a human being who is allowed to develop in the silence and to embrace it as a means of self-reflection and growth is going to be that melting gloop of CD. And in terms of all of our cultural influences, our uncles and our aunts and our, the people and the music and the food, everything's going to be that melting gloop. And when we open our mouths or just walk down the street, we are that amalgamation. We are the product of that big melting pot. Did we say melting pot? America, jazz. Wow.
But your word gloop is great, because I gotta give the kudos to Manny. He actually's got a gig.
Manny.
That's the guy who invented the line.
Tell me.
Yeah, I forgot his last name, but Manny invented the line that all the CDs melted on his dashboard.
Is Manny the guitarist? The homeless?
Yeah, he's the guitarist, and he plays in front of McDonald's in Venice on Lincoln every morning, and he gets paid good, but it's a rough life. But he's a guitar slinger in the great tradition of Detroit rock and roll. MC5, Mitch Ryder, and all that. That came out of Elvin, all the Jones Brothers and P-Funk and all that. And
Jerry, I got to tell you, man, I just yesterday was talking about Detroit because I'm glad you brought up Detroit.
Yeah.
My father is from Detroit, and he graduated. My father was the class president at Cass Technical High School, Cass Tech.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So my dad graduated there in 1957. Charles Burrell, the iconic bass player who's featured in my first two films, Jazztown and Who Killed Jazz. Charles Burrell just passed away. He was 104 years old.
Wow.
He graduated from Cass Tech in 1939. Cass Tech has one of the most amazing lists of musicians, in addition to, and my dad went to school with Lily Tomlin. Donald Byrd was there.
Nice.
Ron Miles comes from Cass Tech.
Nice.
I'm sorry, not Ron Miles. Ron Carter.
Ron Carter. Wow.
Ron Carter, Diana Ross.
Wow.
And then all of these newfangled young funk rocksters you alluded to.
Probably Jerry
Yeah.
Allen too. But here's the one line.
Jerry Allen does. I believe Jerry Allen came from
Dude,
Cass Tech.
she's amazing. She's the only pianist who ever
She's
played with
outrageous.
Ornette. No, she transcribed all of Eric Dolphy's solos. That's why she's a great pianist, because she
Wow, I didn't know that.
transformed. But here's what Manny says. If we get into Cactus, you know this rock band, they're like
No.
the American. They're look them up. They're badass rock and roll, and they're called the American Led Zeppelin. I was like, that's the most ironic statement, because Led Zeppelin just ripped off the black American blues guitarist, and now we're flipping it and going, well, they're the American Led Zeppelin.
That's funny. Oh, that's a beautiful catch,
But here-
Jerry, hold on.
Go ahead.
Can you distract the audience? I got to run to the bathroom real quick.
Oh, of course. Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks,
Now,
man.
I'm gonna distract them. I'm gonna excite them with announcements about your work.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
Okay, so go to Ben's channel and his website. It's all listed there below. And this is our third part, and I'm sure there'll be more. We're going to hopefully get into some documentary filmmaking, but we got a little more to go here on some of these topics that came up organically, like what's the difference between art and science. And so he has started an AI film festival in Bali, and he was suggesting, which rarely people on guests on this podcast say, here's some topics we could cover, because I have an agenda of over 150 questions, and the person I'm interviewing can put the topics they want to talk about into the context they want. But I was really inspired by some of these projects that Ben is working on, new documentaries on Teresa Carroll, women in jazz, red rice, and mass tourism in Bali, and the bass player Jamal Nasser, George, also known as George Joyner, who played with B.B. King, Amal Jamal, and many others. A really exciting documentary on a bass player that's not known as well as should, and that's what we are here to do, is to enlighten people on to topics for research for further development, investigation. How can we learn about, and these are topics he suggested, the weaponization of cultural authority. So there's a lot wrapped up in there we'll get to eventually, because what caused authority, who caused authority, and why did authority get connected with culture? Is it this inevitably going to teach us what we want to gravitate towards? Are we making it happen, or are we watching it happen? And then federally funded artists censoring other artists. So that's an intense topic right there, because of I'm going to go into the root word of censor, etymologically where it comes from, and then who are the gatekeepers in regards to things like having a film festival. My film festival celebrates its 35th year in November, Pixel This, and we kind of threw gatekeepers out the door. We show everything that's entered, and that's troublesome to some people, but since so few films are made to toy video camera, that we feel obliged to just show everything that comes in each year. And that's only a couple dozen. It's not a big film festival. But it is, if we were picking and choosing, as one of my best friends said, attending Pixel This one year, he yelled out, Jerry, curate, which is the big word nowadays, is how do we curate our own things, and how do we respect those who take on the responsibility to say, here, I'm going to show you what's going to be in the film magazines. I'm going to show you what's going to be in the art gallery. So, yeah, I sort of discussed, Ben, a lot of these topics that we're going to get into that you suggested which are brilliant. And I always say, put the questions into the context you want. So if I ask you a question and you want to bring up censorship, weaponization, your new doc projects, Red Road, which I learned a big term right there. But let's go with this Paul Schrader, because we were on the Michigan kick for a second. He was raised in Michigan by Calvinist, really strict religious parents who would not allow him to grow up and watch movies. Well, you better be careful, because if you restrict your kid from watching movies, he might grow up and write Taxi Driver, and then you're in trouble. And he was there with all the biggies, George Lucas, Spielberg, and Coppola, but they all grew up trying to be John Ford, and he didn't see John Ford. He eventually did, but once he got into film, he started watching Bresson and Ozu. So he comes from a little different world. Here's his line that I wanted to interject really quick. The role of the artist is to attempt to sell out but fail. Now, I'm curious your thoughts on that. The role of the artist to attempt to sell out but fail.
That's Paul Schrader's line.
That's Paul Schrader's line. Yeah.
And tell me the context of that.
Well, I don't know the context. That's the funny thing. Let me tell you this. Most people I say that to go, that's great. And I'm like, well, it can be a nice revelation in an aphorism, a quick quippy maxim. But it's also like a little bold saying, my art is so pure that when I tried to sell out, I failed. So I didn't, that's the other way to look at it, which most people don't look at.
That's funny.
I did try to sell out, but I didn't, they didn't buy.
Right. Sort of almost a virtue signaling by failure.
It's virtue signaling. That's the word I needed. Yeah.
Wow, you nailed it, because a lot of people forget that, like, intelligent artists like Paul, who is wonderful. And by the way, the scenario you describe with his parents denying him raises some very complicated and fascinating issues, which is, more and more as personally, as I live through life with all of its suffering that we talked about back in chapter 1, we're presented with an opportunity to choose the way we process it and internalize it. And, we're all familiar with people who are victimizers. They just live in a self state of victimization, and no one wants to be, we don't want to be around those people. But so, I mean, we do, but not for long periods of time. The point I'm getting at is life unfolds the way it does. We're not going to change it. And sometimes these things happen to make us stronger or better. And just think of, would we have a Paul Schrader if he hadn't been constrained or like that? And I'm not saying it was fun for him or that we should purposely do that, but because there are people that we will not be able to change and who do things like that to us, rather than try to kill them or send them off to, the Arctic to a prison. And some do deserve those punishments for sure. But, the notion that we need to avoid toxic people, it is beneficial to a degree, but on the other end, and again, I'll use my own life as an example. I'm going through some things now. Well, actually, I have my whole life where some family members are diametrically opposed or highly critical of my methods, and and it's tempting. I know people who have a difficult time with their mother or their brother or their sister, and they just go, you know what? I deleted them. I had to block them, and I haven't talked to them in years. And I get it, and I understand, and that may be the right thing for a person to do at any given time. But if you're capable, you can also embrace them. Keep the enemy close, and if you disassociate your emotional connection to the issues or to the perceived
Yeah.
need of the relationship, then you get a jousting partner. You
Yeah.
know, that thunder. What does the thunder make you do? It makes you invent clothing and shelter, and also
Exactly.
learn a little bit about electricity.
Dude, that was amazing, because that's the main thing Joyce taught us in Finnegan's Wake, is how do you turn a breakdown into a breakthrough? How do you turn a
Lemons to
rejection?
lemonade. Yeah.
Yeah, well, how do you turn a rejection into redirection?
Oh,
And
is that from the book, or is that you?
well, no, those are just
That's great.
expanding on
Rejection, redirection.
Joyce said epiphanies in everydayness.
It's,
That's one way, but
I
it's
agree with
really
I would agree
redemption.
with him.
It's the redemption thing. It's Icarus, or it's the whole thing where you fall down and you get back up. That's really the main thing. You fall down and get back up. You fall down and get back up. But the one thing is also, American Indians say your enemy's your best teacher. So it's like, how do you flip that? I know what you're talking about, because everybody has. My sister says a great thing. She goes, families are like a rug, and a bump comes up, and then you rub that bump down, and then another bump comes up over there. It's like, okay, I'm gonna rub that bump down, and then another one. Could you fucking settle down on the bumps?
I like whack-a-mole.
And it's whack-a-mole. And she taught me one of the great lessons is the key to successful relationships is how you deal with what you don't like about the other person. It's the how. It's like, and my friend goes, okay, then that's called sweet tolerance. Nope, that's implying what they're doing is wrong. You can't.
Right.
And then
That's
I
right.
go, no, that's adapting. Go, nope. My other friend says, nope, you don't adapt to what they're doing. You accept it. It's like, okay, they're kicking me in the shins every time I see them. You accept it? No, I'm going to move away because I don't want my shins kicked in. But there is that, you got to accept.
Or you put some steel plates under
Yeah,
your hand
that's it.
and watch
See,
what happens the next time they kick you.
and when they kick it, you start a new dance. So here we go. This is what you led so beautifully. And what is the difference between art and science? If there is a difference, is there a difference between art and science, and what is it?
But did I answer your last question? Well,
Well,
I'm not even.
I
I
think
can't remember if I danced away from your question.
You commented on the Schrader if you wanted. And yeah,
Oh.
basically yeah, he said the role of the artist is to attempt to sell out but fail.
Oh, and again, that was important for me to address briefly. I think you nailed it, by the way. Reading in I was going to say these, intelligent artists often couch a little slap in the face or a middle finger back inside of these little statements. But, people oftentimes, we cherry pick a quote from someone that was their truth in that moment in the course of a very complicated life. And so we take it in context, but I think he's absolutely right on one level that, for those who want to make some sort of a success, go ahead, apply yourself, see if you can knock one out of the park playing their game. Any of us can sit around and set our house on fire and take pictures and call it art or whatever. But what does the marketplace, are you intelligent and talented enough to go sell one to the big boys and go home with your slice of pie? Why not give it a try? And in another way of looking at that is, no matter what you do, whatever you create will have yourself intrinsically in it. And if you're functioning from your higher self, just like the invention of AI has humanity in it, or vice versa, anything you make, as long as you're calibrating your moral compass or your artistic compass and giving it 100%, you have every reason to stand behind your creations without an apology. And they're either going to hit or not. There's no guarantee. It's like walking in, it's like taking a shower, guys, flossing your teeth, brushing your teeth, cleaning out, washing your arm, smelling good, dressing nice, grooming yourself, and going out to a bar does not guarantee that you're going to be attractive to anyone there.
Yeah.
You're still going to give it your best shot, but that doesn't guarantee results at that bar.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to go to the parent school meeting and find someone, or the library. And so it's the same with art.
Yeah.
If you're trying to sell something, if you're trying to, did he use the word sellout? Or
He said the role of the artist is to attempt to sell out, but
oh yeah,
to attempt to sell out. So that that carries a lot of baggage, because it's like the guy who did Flipside magazine spawned everybody, the Simpsons and every punk band in LA. He said, Reverend Al, he said, don't sell out, sneak in. So that's a cute way, you
Trojan
sneak
horse.
in, and then
Well, see, I like the idea.
One more little thing is sold out. You can spell it SOULED. I sold out.
Which can go, it's like, are you bad? That could be either way. Yeah, I'm bad. The thing about sellout is it gets such a bad rap in general from artists. Look, if you're an artist, you want to sell out the stadium, right? You want to sell out your gig. You want to play to
wrong with that?
Well, there's no problem. You get to pay your bills and fix your car and actually take your girlfriend out to lunch for the 99-cent burrito special if you can sell the house out.
Right.
So if you're a musician interested in surviving into the future, you want to sell out the venue. Now, but of course the word is manipulated to, in a way, maybe that term is meant to keep people down and in their place anyway.
Yeah.
Because what does selling out mean? What's the result of a sell? The result is that you get to drive a car that actually works. You have a savings account, and you have a shelter that keeps you warm in the storm. That's not a bad thing.
No.
So
you just described a Zappa documentary called The Great Cadillac Extravaganza, and this like Australian rock writer tried to diss Frank because he took a Cadillac from the airport to the gig. He says, you're dissing American culture and you're driving in a Cadillac. He says, dude, I just want the comfort. And he goes wild on it. So it's easy, because it's like, who invented art to be commodification? The cave artist could have said, dude, come on over to my cave. I got some cool art. And while you're here, I'll sell you some peaches or whatever. We don't know who invented consumer capitalism, but we've demonized it, but we're all caught up in it. We can't escape it.
I mean, and the person who wants to buy art and hang on their wall, that makes them happy. There may be other reasons, investment but the point is it's a very positive transaction, that's beneficial to both parties. There's the question is, what artists hate is the idea of someone benefiting and enriching themselves by being a BSer, by being fake. And that's I think the qualification needed to validate the people who really ride that wagon. You're a sellout. Well, if what they're really saying is you're fake, you're being duplicitous, you're being untrue, you're being a BSer. Well, that's a valid thing. But that if that's the case, then that raises the question, well, is the BSer in question simply taking advantage of the idiots who are thirsty and hungry for BS?
Exactly. That's what art is, to fuck your shit up, to make you buy shit you don't need. Like the guy who put the banana on the wall at Miami with duct tape. I love that. I love when people,
Me too,
NFTs will take. Man. No, the art market is like, people are freaking out. But look at NFTs. You know what they stand for? No fucking thing. There's nothing there. if you could get someone to buy your piece of art, this guy said years ago, he created this piece of art where a security guard at an art gallery takes his clothes off. That's his art piece. But there is no documentation. There's no photograph. It's just an idea.
And that's great.
He sold it for 20 grand. And I would describe it to my friends and they'll go, that's bullshit. I says, bullshit. That's taking Duchamp a little hair further.
Yeah, that's
It's art.
genius, man.
Both McLuhan and Warhol said art is anything you can get away with. But then
That reminds me. That reminds me. Before we get, for your viewers and listeners, I've got a box
yeah,
here filled with
yeah.
air that Picasso breathed. No shit. I got it right on my and I'll sell it for the right. It's the box of air that Picasso actually breathed. I got it.
But when I said to my friends, art is anything you can get away with, they said to me, a good recover. They go, that sounds like Trump. And I was like, whoops.
Well, there is
yeah,
the art of Trump.
yeah.
And if you want to pop the lid on that, no president has ever operated in a vacuum. There is a serious, puppet master.
Oh yeah,
incorporated behind that.
Yeah. Okay, but, Ben, what is the difference between
you
art and science? But that was good because see, what I like about ours is so good is you're a brilliant listener and you will recover things that I said 20 or 30 minutes ago and go, oh, I want to keep going into that, or you'll recover it because that's the way conversations flow. It's not just like the typical white male. We're linear and rational. Okay, next question. I answered that one. No, you'll never answer that. It's actually my mom. I says, could I interview you? And she goes, yeah, but everything I say today, I might say differently tomorrow. I said, that's okay. So, you can recover
that's great.
stuff and integrate it into and not a bit. Okay, we're done with that one. Let's go to the next one. So I like that,
Thanks, Jerry.
Because I rush people. I try to get them done in 90 minutes. And, this one has just been so fun because art and science, are they different? And if they are, what's the difference?
Yeah, no difference.
Wow.
They're one and the same. Again, it's culture, it's society that creates the artificial distinction between them. As human beings, we are born artists, scientists, all in one.
Yeah.
And that's that's what screws us up, man, is this notion that you have to go get a degree if you want to make a film, a degree if you want to fix your tooth, you have to go get a degree if you dare to represent yourself in a court of law, pro se, whatever. We're born, we're born scientists and musicians with no demarcation between what illuminates those fields. Now, it's helpful, we've benefited from taking the time to isolate them and to to really microscopically get down. But there's no difference. I mean, like I think I said earlier, science is the art of catching up to art. Trying to.
Well, that's it. I'm going to read some of these quotes because then we'll go off because that's the answer I want to hear. But most people say science is you're distinct.
Jerry, am I a sellout if I say the things you want to hear?
Yeah, they don't know we secretly had these meetings beforehand. We won't tell them about our psychic meetings we had beforehand. But here's Jean Cocteau. Art is science. Art is science made clear.
Sometimes that's absolutely true. Because people are so different, some people get it through art, some people get it through science. My mom and dad are great examples of that. My mother needs to see the data. She needs it presented from an expert with the credentials in the proper formatting, so to speak. My dad, who actually was trained as a scientist but was a poet, dreamer at heart. He got it both ways. I mean, you could sing a song or I could play him a drum solo and he'd get it. And he could get it from either. And
I think you turned out so good because usually the female is the poet dreamer and your mom has the data linear and then you got the other from your dad. So you got you got a bigger picture of integrating right and left hemispheres.
You know what I got? Thank you, Jerry. That's what I think I got was a heavy dose of feminine energy in a masculine package.
That's exactly.
You know, my dad, because it came from my dad, I'm not afraid. My manhood, you know, being a man is not in conflict with being emotionally sensitive to feminine energy, if you will.
Yeah. Well, here's the next one, Ben. This is McLuhan. When we push our paradigms back, we get history. When we push them forward, we get science.
That's cool. I couldn't argue with that, Master. I mean, that's again a very helpful. That's a really helpful construct, you know, of ideas in a sentence there. That is absolutely true at certain times. You know, yeah. I wish I could be more deep on a response to that, but I think
don't worry about it, because there's if you
I think you nailed it.
I think Marshall, he says, if you don't like that one, I got some more.
Okay.
But you like that. But it reminded me of George Clinton's great line, brother, can you paradigm? Isn't that a great line?
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
And it's that push and pull. It's jujitsu. You know, Ju means soft and gentle. Jutsu means art and science. So it's like you push and pull. People want to distinguish, you know, left and right hemisphere, dark and light, and in art and science. Here's Chomsky.
Well, see, so let me jump in. The thing is because you just heard me have this gushing embrace of the great one, you know, that science and art is the same. But here's the catch to that is you know, you get artists who really resent and fight science. They resent, you know, having things stripped down and presented as fact when it's disassociated from all of the, and you have scientists the same who dismiss feelings and intuition and yet at the same time, what those extremists, you know, artists and scientists are extremists, perhaps of the same Mobius strip, but is we need them. We need they're explorers of extremities, whether they're going in opposite directions around the same circle. We need the data they come back with, you know, whether it's nonverbal feeling, art-based stuff, or, you know, but we have to have guidance. We need teachers, leaders, or a developed sense of self to integrate what they come back with and make sense of it.
Yeah. I think that's what both of us have been fortunate. We've had great teachers, great people, and great people just to share our learning with. Because here's Chomsky's. We learn more about ourselves from literature than we do from science.
Well, and Chomsky's probably read more books than anyone ever in the history, shy of AI. And he's a literary guy, and he's a professor of words. So, you know, that's true only, you know, to people in a sort of a liberal arts, you know, background. There's plenty of people who don't read books and they're still dialed in. Tell me the quote again. Read the quote.
We learn more about ourselves from literature than from science.
Well, and of course you have to define, because science can be presented as literature, but and again, I think that's true depending on your audience. Some people do learn. It's like math teachers. I think great math teachers, and I've had maybe one in my life. Thank you, Mr. Johnson from 7th grade. People that can stand in front of a classroom and adapt to each student's needs. You know, he writes what's plainly obvious to him on the chalkboard, uses the words to describe it, and other people are like, I don't get it. So a great teacher finds another way to present the same exact data, but packaged in a sellout, you know, in a different way. And so if you get it from literature, that's your hardwired. That's great. If you get it from science, that's great. You Stephen Hawkins, Richard Feynman, whatever, fill in any great scientist, and they probably have a balance, but certainly the great scientists are able to look at a formula or an equation or observe a function of nature, and they get it. They may be able to translate it into a literary thing too, but the beauty and the truth is it innately exists in both of those worlds. It's just how do we interpret it? And some people are wired to get it through literature, and some people through science.
Yeah, actually, you anticipated the one I close with, but I'm going to read it now because it's so perfect what you said. Paul Vinet, he's a French archaeologist and historian. Science finds no truths. It discovers unknown facts that can be interpreted 1,000 ways.
That's pretty juicy.
Because isn't that art? Art can be interpreted many ways, and science can be interpreted ways.
Yeah, and to a degree. I mean, the findings can be the why behind science can be interpreted. We arguably may never know why, but I don't think that the periodic table can be very well debated. That's pretty much, at least on this planet, in this reality. Does it hold up if we can go 50 light years that way? Well, if it doesn't hold up, it means it just needs to be amended. But I understand there's a great warning in that quote, because anyone who feels that they are in possession of the truth because of being informed through science or literature, they're in danger of a lot of bad things. Authoritarianism, aside from just pure ignorance. For example, you can study the way electricity behaves, and you do so above ground. Well, is it going to be the same when you get into a body of water?
Yeah.
I don't think so. So the science is 100% true and accurate, factual. If you're playing with live wires above ground, it's going to be very different if you're standing in a pool of water, right?
Yeah.
So is that a matter? Is that a matter of the science changing, or our understanding of the facts becoming more broad?
It's both and neither, and it's context. It's context.
Yeah, it's context.
It's what context. But here's a good little exercise we can do. This is a famous aphorism that in
aphorism. I got to use that word more.
And
is aphorism connected to aphrodisiac?
I'm going to go etymology online and look it up when we're done, because I try to find out all the ways you could say aphorism: one-liners, maxims, quips, probes. Marshall's best.
Oh man, I need those.
Probes quips is the best word. Well, as a verb and a noun.
Say it.
Probe, P-R-O-B-E is the best one.
As because in proboscis.
Because this is Arthur Clarke. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So basically what I think he's saying is anything we invent is kind of hard to say it's not magic. So any thoughts on that? Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Most likely in the moment to the person that wasn't developing it, the scientists who are figuring a way to put it in a box and attach it to a switch, they've worked beyond the magic part. They understand it. When we first see something, fire probably looked like magic. It's not, a car, probably freaked a lot of cowboys, farmers out at first, and looked like magic. But now we don't think of it as a car. We know all about combustion engines and axles and transference of force. And so yeah, at first those things are, that's where primal fears and that's where ghost stories and stuff come from. It's exactly where, yeah. So he's right, but it's in context because you know, that Bic lighter, you know, people talk about, well, what if you went back in time 1,000 years with a Bic lighter? I mean, you'd be a god. Well, they'd kill you. Someone would probably kill you with a rock and take it. But
Well, this is Warren Ellis. I don't know who he is, but he reworded it. Any sufficiently advanced civilization is indistinguishable from its nature.
oh, wait a minute. Okay, Warren Ellis. The thing about your last guy.
Yeah, Arthur C. Clarke.
Oh, that was our God. I loved reading him when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Arthur C. Clarke. That's a guy that struck me. Maybe I was just you know, following the propaganda, but you know, everyone knew of Arthur C. Clarke as a scientist writer. Like
Yeah.
he was a literary guy grounded in science that wrote these fantastic sci-fi. So he bridged those worlds very, very nicely. The thing about that is the fact that that humans do tend to see advanced technology as magic is the danger of AI, of cults, of religions. It's humans need to recognize that because we do tend to have that reaction to modern tech, we need to be vigilant that we don't succumb to cult, you know, to creating new religions. You know, that's an unhelpful way of getting into the science. And a lot of people were just lazy. Science is hard. Reading equations, understanding blah, 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 blah. A lot of people are just lazy. It's so much easier to see a little picture book that shows bad things being destroyed by good things. And, oh, okay, get on your knees, burn a little incense, do the right prayer. And so, and this isn't critical because with AI, what I've seen in my research with AI and how it relates to the Balinese International AI Film Festival and a lot of wonderful filmmakers and newly minted artists are submitting their work, there's a whole army of people violently opposed to AI. And there's a small but growing group, small maybe in the millions now, of people who are convinced AI is a spirit guide.
Yeah.
You know, it is a voice. It's a voice from the spirit world coming through, you know, so we've got to be careful about that. Arthur C. Clarke is right.
And that's no matter what we do. McLuhan reworded this rewording of aphorisms is really cool because Marshall took Churchill's "we shape our buildings, then they shape us," and he changed it to "we shape our tools, then they shape us." So it's shaping
That's
us.
Exactly right.
And it's
That's
our
right.
responsibility because you would have loved on Coast to Coast last night. This guy came on just for a second. When I go to the bathroom, I turn it on in the middle of the night, and he said Elvis became a Blavatsky freak. You know, got into Blavatsky and the whole religious sort of new agey religion thing, and through that he got into the mob asking his best friend to go kill Priscilla's new boyfriend, her karate teacher. And the boy,
was that true?
Well, I mean, he sounded like he said he's read every book on Elvis. It sounded like it was true, but he said basically the friend of Elvis said, "No, I can't do it. I can't kill someone," which is like going back to like religion and death and killing and sacrifice. It's all like so connected.
Oh, it's so connected.
Like, what is religion and science and arts difference? That's the other one, because here's the next one. This is a sci-fi writer. Well, Bruce Ellis is hard to suss out. Any advanced civilization is indistinguishable from its nature. So what is nature? But here's Bruce Sterling. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from its garbage. That one, isn't that great? Because we toss this stuff out. Like you probably know it better in your culture there in Bali. Who invented garbage and waste? The people way back, they probably didn't have waste. They just used everything.
Almost. I agree. It's fascinating. I love that quote. because it's humorous.
Yeah.
The visual, just the visual is a pun, which
Yeah.
is very helpful. One man's garbage is another man's treasure, whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, and the fact that all across the world now there are mounds of electronic devices tossed,
Yeah.
filled with little gold circuit board components and advanced technology just tossed into heaps. Well, but the last thing you said about like in Bali and the origins of trash, my observations here, because Bali is suffering like just like America did before they passed a lot of laws and did a lot of education on the ills of littering, which didn't solve it completely, but with $1,000 fines, people are throwing plastic a little less frequently in America. In Bali, people burn piles of plastic trash in their yards, standing around with their infants, because it's a fun little fire, and they're saving the money that you would pay someone to come pick up your trash and burn it on the other side of the island. My theory, watching all of this, is, and it's not distinct or unique to the Balinese people. The Balinese people, this island of Bali, allows us a view into our own past, because before the invention of plastics and aluminum, right, everything was packaged in a banana leaf.
Oh, wow.
It was tied with coconut hemp.
Yeah.
So when you're done, so when grandma steams some fish with the most delicious spices you can imagine in a banana leaf wrapping, wherever you're walking, you just pitch it. You eat your papaya, you pitch it. You eat your coconut shell, you toss it. Well, coconut shells actually dried in the sun become a source of fuel. People here burn coconut shells to cook on.
Yeah.
Many use, but the point is, on a tropical island, it used to be you could throw bones, plants, anything that you used was organically reassimilated into the earth fairly quickly. What bothers, so and the thing is now you put government sanctioned plastic. In other words, hey, if the government lets these companies sell their stuff on our shelves, it must be good. So now we have all the single-use plastic. That's a hideous problem, contributing to early deaths, cancerous, right? We're all breathing burning plastic here. But the point is, why? Well, because the habitual tossing of your banana leaf, of your papaya skin, you have your banana peel, it's just of your plastic. It's just, we've got thousands of years of just knowing that we can pitch this stuff back into the earth and it's actually good for the earth. Now, the difference is the Balinese people do not like dead leaves and dead flowers. So there's some kind of organic materials that in their mind, that's rubbish. And we sweep that up. You clean the path to your house. You clean the streets and your driveways of dead flowers. Cigarette butts, plastic, that doesn't matter. That's just part of the deal. So it's really interesting. I'm guessing that to our ancient ancestors, they didn't embrace everything to bring a little sense of order and cleanliness. You keep the dead leaves, the crinkly dead leaves that just make a mess, right? Or the dead, that was the unsightly garbage and rubbish, maybe. But oil, blood, guts, fish, pig heads, banana peels, that's all good stuff.
Yeah. It's like a compost pile. You compost. You put in a cauldron, and you reuse it. Yeah, I love the word upcycling instead of even recycling. You upcycle.
So when I first moved here, and we lived in we were renting a small villa near a large compound of other children, a mixture of Balinese and Javanese. A lot of the workforce, kind of like Mexicans to America, here in Bali, a lot of Javanese and people from Timor and the surrounding Indonesian islands will come as a labor force.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we had this great mixture of children, and they'd come over. We had sort of this unfinished gravel-filled parking lot area around us that was great for children to play, but it always collected trash, the wind, people driving by, throwing stuff. So I would offer the children, small amounts of money, enough for them to go buy a little treat
Yeah.
if they help me pick up the rubbish. Here we
Yeah.
use the word rubbish. So I got the kids together and I said, okay, here's the big trash bucket. You guys pick up all the rubbish, put it in the trash bucket. What do? They start picking up dead leaves.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, and the dead leaves and a piece of plastic. So to them, rubbish was the dead organic material as well. So I had to teach them, my definition of rubbish was non-organic, plastics, wrappers, cans, bottles. They're not taught that. They don't distinguish.
That's amazing, because that word nature on Warren Ellis, any sufficiently advanced civilization is indistinguishable from its nature. Marshall talked about new nature. Kids don't know the world without cell phones. That is a nature for them. We didn't know the world without electricity. We've lived in electricity our whole lives. We never learned in a world without landlines. And so that is a form of nature that surrounds us. So he called it a new nature,
It's fascinating. Again, my in-laws here, my father-in-law, who I love very dearly. My father passed a number of years ago. This guy, my wife's dad, I call him Nanang. Nanang, he asked me to call that. That's an old school, maybe what Americans might call cheesy or old-fashioned way of saying grandpa. But he wants me to call him that. So, anyway, my Nanang and his wife, they're farmers. They're rice farmers in the center of Bali. Their land has no running electricity. It has no running water. And they go out barefoot every day, planting rice by hand, harvesting by hand with this little blade. To them, it's this modern tool they have. It's this little blade that fits in your hand. And when the rice is ready to be harvested, you can do this quick little flick and cut of the tops of the anyway, and I go out there and I work with them under the sun. It's an amazing insight into the way the world was. I mean, you can spend all afternoon. It's the only way to get a cup of coffee is we gather some of these dried coconut or dried banana tree leaves to make a fire, to get a pot, to go find some water. We bring some bottled water to make a cup of coffee. So it's pretty. So I've been filming one of the next documentaries in my post-production plate that I'm seeking anyone interested in getting on board with Be Making Film and helping me bring these films to light. It's called Nasi Merah. That means red rice. And this is the story of my father and his wife, my mother-in-law, and the way they still harvest rice, fruit, flowers, the same way their ancestors did. With the addition that my mother-in-law prefers to wear the rubber boots. My dad still goes barefoot.
Wow.
It's amazing, intense, man.
Ben, I know I got to get going here, but I want to do a part 4.
No, you don't.
I know all these new docs that you're delving into really intrigue me. Teresa Carroll, Women in Jazz, and especially that bass player, George Joyner. I mean, that's amazing. And I want to get into Red Road. I want to get into censorship. I want to get into just that topic of truth. And I want to get into your film festival, because I was so glad you took one of our Venice-based filmmakers, Damon Packard, and put him in your film festival, because the one thing is about gatekeeping. You brought up topics to discuss. What I've learned in my studies, guess who invented film festivals? Mussolini.
Wow.
So, whoever it is, I didn't know that. But you can Google it. You can Google it, and it's like I went the deep dive into who invented the double bass. And your thing. Oh, that was heavy. And basically one of them says Ludwig invented it, but your guy Ray started working on it, and then he abandoned it, and then Louis Belson gets the credit. So it's that thing is we always want to credit, and it's it's called causality, it's called determinism. Where did this come from? It's
deep. Called ownership of the narrative too.
Ownership of the narrative is the other. Like, if I can tell the story, if you win, like Kissinger says, if I win, I write the history. So that's not good always, but we want to keep critically thinking about who writes the books.
Absolutely. And invite more writers to the table.
Yeah,
Everyone has a right.
yeah,
Everyone has a right to write.
yeah,
Um, no one has the right to keep someone else from writing. They'll
yeah,
try, and they may
yeah,
use the weapons of institutional structures to keep you out of
yeah,
their pie eating party. But anyone who's interested in the truth should celebrate the invitation of more writers. The more writers, the better. Not necessarily on your project. Too
yeah,
many chefs in the kitchen, but we need more people writing books, more people making movies,
yeah.
more people telling the history, so that we can enjoy the buffet.
Yeah. I love it because Sam Goldwyn said, "As for the critics, don't even ignore them."
that hit me in two waves.
Ben, I love your laugh, and I hope to laugh with you soon again. Thank you so much for your time and energy. You are the best. I really appreciate these deep delves. Do a lot for me.
Ditto. To save time, I'll just say the same back at you. You're a marvelous human being, Jerry. Thank you. Let's do this again.
Thank you, Ben. I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, but I know this will never end. It's gone from a 12-part Netflix to a 22-part Netflix series.
We got signed for another season.
Yeah, did you see the end of part 2? You whip out your clapboard and you clap it, and it goes